When I first saw this release from Seagull, especially in this red variation, I thought, wow, that's a good looking watch. But I was a little bit surprised that this watch company had released a watch that looked like this, because I didn't associate this style of watch with this company. What also surprised me was the cost of this watch. It was a lot lower than I expected from Seagull. Seagull watches are great, but they do tend to be a little bit more expensive than I probably would feel comfortable spending, unless perhaps they're on special. But this one, the one that stood out to me most that I've ever seen from the brand, was actually priced very reasonably. But what I wasn't expecting was something that I felt, saw and experienced when this watch arrived on my doorstep. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. And I've owned a few watches from Seagull before. There's quite a few amongst their range that I really would like to own, but the prices of them are a little bit beyond what I'm comfortable spending. And it's probably because I'm associating Seagull watches and comparing those watches and associate them with other Chinese brand watches and Aliexpress watches, which is probably unfair about Seagull. Because Seagull, albeit that they are sold on Aliexpress and made in China, well, they're not really an Aliexpress brand. So it's rather unfair that I'm applying this to them, but I tend to do that, so that's why I've only ever had a couple in my collection before. And those ones I've bought when they are on special. But when I saw this release, a release priced at 270 Australian dollars, I thought, wow, that's actually very reasonably priced for the specifications that you get. But more because this watch just looks absolutely brilliant. Now, although I loved it the first time I saw this watch, and although I think it is priced really well, I didn't immediately buy it. And the only reason I didn't immediately buy it is because, well, I have quite a few watches in my collection currently that I think this watch sort of fits into that same category. And it's a category that I particularly like. It is the sports style watch, this Garter style watch with a really pretty dial on a bracelet in a good set of dimensions. It really does fit into this trend that I'm seeing, or at least a trend that I particularly like. But I didn't immediately buy it because, well, I've got lots of watches that for me fit that category in my collection. But then Seagull reached out to me and they said, hey, would you like to feature this watch on your channel? And I said, well, that is the one that I particularly like from you guys. So yes, thank you. I think I could possibly feature this one on my YouTube channel. Thank you very much, Seagull. And thank you so much to Seagull, because then they supplied this one to me and I get to keep it. And that is why earlier on in this video, you would have seen that sponsored icon pop up. And of course, I'm going to leave some links to the Seagull website and to the official store on AliExpress. That one will be an affiliate link, and I thank you if you choose to use it. But thank you again to Seagull, because now I get to enjoy a watch which I really wanted to enter my collection, but I probably couldn't justify to enter my collection, but because it was free, it's entered my collection. So it was definitely the red dial variation of this one that really captured my attention, and it was thankfully the one that I was able to get into my collection and feature in today's video. Now the red one, they actually describe as the lava, but they come in a couple of other colors as well. There's a gray dial, which they call the rock. There's a blue dial, which they call the ocean. And there's a sandy color, which, well, conveniently they call June. But I said at the start of this video that there was a bit of a surprise for me. And it wasn't a surprise in regards to liking the looks of it. It wasn't the surprise for me in regards to the quality of it. It wasn't the surprise for me regarding me liking it. It was a surprise to me in regards to a specific dimension, in particular, the height of this watch. Now, I've actually looked at lots of photos, I've read lots about it, I've watched lots of reviews of it, but for some reason I seem to have missed that one critical dimension. The one thing that I think would have stood out to me more than I would have realized, and may have actually pushed me to buy this watch, because this is a particularly thin watch. And I'm really, really appreciating watches that are a little bit thinner, because watches that are around 10 millimeters tall or high tend to sit in a particular way on wrist very differently to others. And it's a really nice experience, and I really do enjoy it. And this watch, well, it does have a height of 10.1 millimeters. The rest of the dimensions are relatively standard and dimensions that I like, because the case is 40.3 millimeters, the lug is 20, that goes down to 18. a lug width of 46.5 millimeters, which I'm appreciating recently too, and it only weighs in at 124 grams. Now these dimensions in general translate to a nice on-wrist experience for me. These 40 millimeters by 20 millimeters really does work, especially with a lug to lug dimension of around 46, 47 millimeters, but it is that 10 millimeter height that really then elevates the feel of this watch on wrist. It really does stand out whenever I wear a watch that has a height of around this sort of height. There's something about it. Every time I see it, every time I put one on, I think, wow, that's a little bit extra special, a little bit luxurious, but it's just beyond that. It's not just that it feels a little bit luxurious, it just feels special. And these thinner watches that I have in my collection that I think of and I see that have this slightly smaller height generally then feature a high beat Miyota movement. But of course, Seagull doesn't feature Miyota movements. Seagull features Seagull movements. This one features the automatic ST17. This comes with a 3 Hz movement, vibrating at 21,600 vibrations per hour. But of course, what we need to focus on this particular watch, beyond that nice height, is the dial. Really, it is the first thing that attracted me to it and is likely the reason why you'll buy this watch. And this dial really does have a 3D element to it. But whenever I do see these 3D style dials, I always tend to put them into 2 categories, and that is because that's my experience. I put them into a 3D dial that looks very cheap and plasticky, and then I put it into a 3D dial category that feels really, really good. Thankfully, more and more watches that I'm experiencing are going into that latter category of being really good, and this one definitely goes in that category too because it is a really nicely 3D textured dial and it really does look nice. But another thing I didn't quite expect about this watch, and perhaps it's because of the level of the 3D effect to it, is just how much it plays with the light at different directions. Now the surface of it feels like a bit of a satin sort of finish, but as you angle it, you almost get sort of shadows playing with that dial. And I have to admit, I've got a few videos that I'm going to be putting over the top of this one, this B-roll footage of me creating this effect, because it is very cool and it is very interesting, and it works in nicely with this Fume red dial too. But what also works in really nice with this dial texture, color and shape is what they've done with the hands and the markers, because you'll see that the hands and the markers really reflect each other's sort of style and shape, which is nice. It really does link together. But if you look closer, you'll see that the 12, 3, 6 and 9 battens are a little bit thicker, giving it a little bit of a more visual element that is nice. The hands are nice and long, those applied markers and those hands are polished, but you can see there's plenty of lume in there. During the day, that really assists with legibility, but of course it also affects the nighttime view of this watch. Having that much lume translate to some really nice after dark lume effect. Oh, hello, sorry to interrupt. I hope you're enjoying the video so far, and if you are enjoying the video, I'd just like to invite you to subscribe to the channel. You just have to click on that little subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, but it does make a big difference to me and this channel, and really gives me that motivation to continue making content. But let's get back to this video. Now, although I was surprised about this style of watch coming from Seagull, what surprised me even more about this specific watch is what they've designed and what they've done with that sub second hand. Because it's not a sub second hand, it is a compass rose. I'm not sure if I've seen this before, and I certainly haven't seen it on this style of watch, especially with that style of textured dial. But I'm not 100% convinced that I like it. I can say I don't dislike it, but I'm not sure if perhaps a more simple sub second hand would have been better. But perhaps it wouldn't be. This is one of those things, and I do this a lot with watches, where I think, oh, maybe I would change this. But then when I think about what it would look like when I change it, perhaps that wouldn't elevate this watch. Perhaps that wouldn't make it better. And not that I could change it anyway. So we have this interesting sub-second hand. And it definitely becomes a feature of this watch. And it is something a little bit different. So that is nice. And it does then make it stand out in my collection against my other sports textured interesting dial watches. So it's nice to then at least have something different. Now that's all covered by a crystal that they describe as synthetic sapphire, and I'm always a little bit unsure of what that really means, so I'm just going to say that it is a crystal which they describe as synthetic sapphire. Now I've already gone on and on about the height of this watch, but something that I really like about this particular watch is the case design. Working in with that slimmer height, they've done a really nice variation of a case, especially with the differences in polishing and brushing, because that solid bezel is polished. It leads down to the tops of those lugs, which are also polished. The underside of the case is also polished, and those polishing segments of the watch then sandwich that brushing along the side. And because this is a thinner watch, that case profile is thinner, and having that polished brush polish, I don't know, it just seems to work and look really nice. It also then takes a little bit of the dressiness away from this watch, which is nice too, making it a little bit more of an everyday watch, which I think this style of watch really deserves. But because there is some polish on there too, and because it does fit on wrist the way that it does, it certainly could be feeling like a bit of a dress watch as well. And the 50 meters of water resistance probably reflects that sort of dressy element to this watch as well. And that comes from this non-screw down crown. The good thing about a non-screw down crown, and something that I am appreciating, is that it makes it easier to hand wind this movement, because this watch movement, this Seagull movement, does have hand winding. However, as you pull that crown out, you'll see first of all that it has no ghost position, which is nice, having no date on this watch, having no ghost position. But you'll see that sub-second, that interesting compass rose, remains moving, because this does not have hacking. And that leads me through to the bracelet. On first inspection, I like the look of this bracelet. I like the style of this bracelet. I like this sort of individual link looking bracelet with a mixing of the brushing and the polishing. But it does let me down a little bit, because they are not actual individual links. They are faux individual links. And I think that probably is coming from the price category of this watch. It would be quite difficult at this lower price to have a really elevated bracelet. As it is, it's nice, it looks good. It is definitely comfortable, but it is noticeable, but they are not individual links. I'm not sure if I would have wanted to pay extra to get that. Possibly I would, but as it stands, this is the watch that we have in front of us, so this is the one that I'm showing you. And as you then go down to the butterfly clasp, I'm also a little bit unsure about that too. It does make it a little bit more elegant on wrist, and possibly that is what Seagull is going for with this watch. 50 meters of water resistance, nice and thin on wrist, and a butterfly clasp. Perhaps they are pushing it into more of an everyday dressy watch rather than a Garter style watch. All I can say is that I really like it. I like this color variation. I like the texture that they've used. I love how it plays with the light, that 3D effect. And I do particularly love how it sits down on wrist because of that height of the watch. Thank you so much for watching. Maybe there's a couple other watch videos here that you might want to watch next.